Well, the impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s struggle for racial equality in the United States still resonates today, and it's never taken for granted by a whole generation whose lives and opportunities drastically changed from the ones that their ancestors experienced.
Here now with more on how her life has been shaped by Dr. King's dream, Dr. Kossie-Chernyshev, professor of history at Texas Southern University. Dr. Kossie-Chernyshev, it is great to see you, meet you by Zoom. All right, so you were 11 days old when Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. You were born in Houston's historic St. Elizabeth's Hospital, and this was a segregated hospital. So tell us a little bit about your life growing up in Fifth Ward.
Yes, well, actually, most of my life, I grew up actually not in the Fifth Ward area, but in an area that's called Ryan's Addition, and then eventually in the Cynic Woods area. But everything started at St. Elizabeth's Hospital for Negroes. Of course, I had no clue that I was even there on that day. I had no clue that Dr. King was giving a speech. I presume that I was in my mother's loving arms, just 11 days old, not even understanding the world around me. And this is why it's so important for us to share history with our kids and with our families, because as I move forward, I learned in school about Dr. King, and as a professional historian, I started to look back and realize how even my own life was so directly impacted by things that were developing that I had no clue about as a child, right? And so my educational background reflects the impact of the civil rights movement on my family, on my sisters and brothers, as we moved into a newly integrated neighborhood. The high schools that my brothers and sisters attended reflected the changes that were happening in the city of Houston. My elder brothers and sisters, some went to M.B. Smiley High School. The others of us went to Forest Brook High School. We watched our community change over time. I graduated valedictorian of my high school class of 1981 and went on to Rice University, which was integrated in the 1960s. First, Dr. Raymond Johnson joined Rice as a graduate student, and eventually students started to come to Rice in the 1970s, and I was among those who joined in the 1980s. And so my education there continued even through the PhD, where I learned through research. In fact, one of my historian friends said, well, Karen, I think you're the first African-American woman to earn a PhD in the field of history in the state of Texas. And so when you start to see in these direct instances where your life is impacted by laws that were created before you were even aware that they were there, there's a real connection between the laws that that are on the books and then our lives. Voting rights, there's just so much that we can talk about.
There are so many firsts that you have in your resume. Of course, you've been at TSU for 27 years. You're tenured professor for 15. And you talk about going to Rice and earning your PhD. You're also at Rice, the first African-American we mentioned to earn your PhD in that same field. But how do you think your legacy, your place in history was shaped by this day, by the I Have a Dream speech? Have you ever thought about it that way?
Well, absolutely. Your guests before were talking about the dream, the importance of dreaming, of having a vision. And of course, I was inspired as a child by his speech. We were all taught to think about what we wanted to be as children. The only thing I ever really said I wanted to be was a philanthropist. And I guess in some very important way, as an educator, I get to share knowledge all the time. But the hope that's inherent in the idea of dreaming and moving forward and thinking about positive ways that we want to impact the community.
Let's talk a little bit more about your personal life today. Your husband, Dr. Chernyshев, he's an award-winning sleep specialist, naturalized American citizen as well. So it turns out your interracial marriage, look at this beautiful couple right here on your screen. So without the civil rights movement, Loving versus Virginia in 1968, it would not have been legal for you and your husband to have gotten married. Give us your thoughts on that and just where we are today in the world, because while we have come a long way, and here's your husband and your son we're seeing on the screen now, while we have come a long way, you've said that right now we really are at a crossroads.
Yes, I'm honestly in some ways surprised by some of the rhetoric that I hear, because as I was experiencing the fulfillment of so many dreams in my own life, it was a surprise to see that there was a kind of a dissonance that was happening. But those of us who have been impacted in a positive way by the social changes, social political changes, economic opportunity, educational opportunity, we know that there are a lot of positive things that have developed as a result of Dr. King's dream and the hope that was generated from that for so many. At the same time, as a historian, I understand that when change occurs, there's always resistance to change. Mm-hmm. And so we have to take the time to understand why there are these continued pockets of resistance. And in addition to that, we also have to pay attention to why people are being made to feel afraid. You know, what are they afraid about? And we have to also take the time to try to educate and share with them the positive that we've seen develop in our country. And there's overwhelming positive development as a result of Dr. King's dream.
So much positive development for sure. But again, we have about 30 seconds left, so not a lot to dive into detail here, but still lots of work to be done today.
Exactly.
Well, we love your optimism, Dr. Karen Kossie-Chernyshev. Thanks so much for spending time with us today as we look back on the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. We appreciate the insight. And to connect with Dr. Kossie-Chernyshev, visit our website, HoustonLife.tv.
Still to come, living history, how to share the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with younger generations.